Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wolfpacker Show. My name's Ethan McDowell. I am here with Noah Fleischman, and we are here to talk about NC State's 30-20 win over Louisiana Tech. That is a game that ended up being a lot more interesting than I think most folks expected. Noah and I recorded a show earlier this week where we both predicted massive blowout wins. That was not the case Saturday afternoon. NC State fell into an early deficit and had to claw their way back in the second half without starting quarterback Grayson McCall, who left the game with an undisclosed injury. And there's two starting cornerbacks, Aiden White and Brandon Cisse. Aiden missed the game in his day-to-day, and Brandon Cisse, again, left the game with an undisclosed injury. So the Pack fought through some adversity Saturday. It was not a perfect game, far from it. And we're going to talk about some areas where we are still very concerned about the Pack's performance right now. But there were certainly signs of life in that second half. The defense looked like a Tony Gibson disruptive defense. The offense, caught a little bit of fire with CJ Bailey under center. So we're going to talk about all of that. But before we do so, a quick housekeeping note. We're both writers for the Wolfpacker.com. That is NC State's site on the On3 network, the fastest growing college football, basketball, recruiting site out there. Whether you're looking for analysis on this game, recruiting news, if you're looking for some preview on basketball stuff, we've got that coming up soon. And it's all going to be on the Wolfpacker.com. You can check it out right now. We're going to be running a deal during the run-up to the Clemson game. It'll be 50% off and annual subscription. So go check that out. And, it's a great deal for all access to, our premium message board, all of the scoops we post on there about recruiting the team, and of course, all of our thoughts on NC State's run-up to a huge matchup with Clemson next week. But before we get to the Tigers this week, Noah, let's talk about the Bulldogs, NC State's win over Louisiana Tech. A little bit closer than we expected, huh?
It was a closer game. NC State's, offense had another slow start. 6 points in the first half, all field goals. And they turned it on in the second half. Defense played well, offense played well. CJ Bailey showed what he can do, which I think is pretty important at this point of the year. And of course, never want to see anybody get hurt. Grayson McCall left the game with an injury, kind of undisclosed. We find out more Monday. But, it's just one of those things that even though Bailey came in and played really, really well and everyone's praising him, it's still, a tough situation for Grayson McCall, a guy who's dealt with multiple injuries in his career, another one now. And we'll see if it keeps him out, how long it keeps him out. And we'll hopefully learn a lot more about that on Monday. Maybe not with Clemson this weekend. I kind of fear that NC State is going to play we've got two quarterbacks that can play and make Dabo Swinney guess. But we got some time to talk about that later in the week. Overall, though, NC State battled adversity. Its defense picked up the offense, and that really was the big deal, I think, from this one. DK Kaufman's pick six on the first drive of the second half kind of set the tone for NC State, who was able to kind of, get rolling. Kendrick Raphael had a big game on the ground for NC State, 9 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown, his first score of the year. And then CJ Bailey touched on the ground as well to kind of, put that game out of reach and win 30-20.
Let's talk about the first half. Just a really weird half of football, man. Like you said, I don't think the offense looked terrible, but it was out of sync. They were trying to push the ball downfield. It didn't work. Before McCall's injury, he had one pass over 15 yards. And that wasn't for a lack of trying. They were trying to connect down the field. There was, I think, one drive where they threw down to the field to Noah Rogers twice and then KC once. And that passing attempt to KC in the end zone, which was overthrown. McCall had a rusher right in his face, and that was his last play of the game, I believe. So they were trying to push the ball downfield. They were trying to, put together some sort of deep passing game, but it wasn't connecting. It wasn't really working out. McCall completed 9 of 13 passes for 54 yards. So it was efficient football, but it wasn't explosive football in the first half. And like you said, they didn't finish either of their drives into Louisiana Tech territory, finishing with 2 field goals. And meanwhile, on the defensive side of the ball, the defense they did pretty good, man, for the first quarter. In the first quarter, they allowed just 12 total yards, negative 13 rushing yards. Of course, a big part of that was on a bad snap that Caden Fordham ended up recovering. but they really shut down the Bulldogs in the first quarter, and then things really unraveled for literally a 2.5 minute stretch in the second quarter, right, Noah?
Yeah, I mean, things went from pretty good to really bad really quick. And True Edwards kind of gashed him for Louisiana Tech. He was a guy that made big play after big play, it seemed like in the second quarter. I mean, when you look at his numbers from the first half, he had 3 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown. I looked down, and I was like, is this true? But he had is it true? His name is true. He had a 71-yard catch, the scoring touchdown to put them up 14-6. And I was like, oh gosh, this isn't going well at all.
Yeah, he
Guess
came
what
into
happened though?
this game with it was 321 career receiving yards, and he had, like you said, 141 on 3 catches.
Yeah, he had nearly half of his career receiving yards and 3 catches in the first half. He played a game of his life in the first half.
Yeah.
But NC State makes adjustments. He had 1 catch or 4 yards after halftime. So they figured it out. But yeah, second quarter did not go NC State's way. Put them in a hole. At Louisiana Tech scoring 17 points. But they found a way to get out of it.
Yeah, they gave up 190 yards in the second quarter. In the second half, they gave up 122. So the adjustments they made clearly worked. No, we were talking about this right before we started recording, and we can kind of dive into it now. The defensive backs, what a game! Like, despite that rough second quarter, like in a game where you're missing your top 2 corners, one of which is an all ACC type of player, future NFL player, and they really kept it together. Corey Coley, he allowed a couple plays, but I mean, I thought he was really good. He was flying around the field, especially helping out as a tackler. Devon Marshall, he looked outstanding in this game. It was really our first time seeing him in extended action, and man, Jackson Vick, former highly touted recruit, first time really seeing him in game action, and dang, I thought that trio played really good football yesterday. Earlier this summer, Tony Gibson told us that he thought this was the deepest they've ever been at corner, and you always have to take those preseason comments with a grain of salt, really. But it looks very real. That looked very legitimate against Louisiana Tech. I thought that trio was outstanding.
They were. I mean, their coverage grades are off the charts, all above average according to PFF. This was NC State's best coverage day of the year, according to PFF. Those guys led the way. But yeah, you talk about the defense still had 7 pass breakups. Those 3 dudes combined for 3. Jackson Vick was the only one not to get one, but Devon Marshall had 2. And he played really, really well.
Yeah.
Corey Coley was the most picked on corner. He had 10 targets, allowed 6 receptions. Played pretty well. He gave up 1 big play. Other than that, limited the action. Devon Marshall was targeted 9 times. Gave up 3 catches. Only one of those 3 catches went for longer than 2 yards. So he was playing outstanding. Marshall had just a couple of tackles, 3 tackles, all solos. Vic had 3 with 2 solos. And then Corey Coley played well. 5 tackles, 4 solo stops. As you said, all over the field, especially in run support. So those 3 guys stepped up well. And I think, Ethan, NC State thought it had a deep cornerback room going into the day. I think this confirmed to Tony Gibson, Dave Doran, that yes, if Brandon C stays out for an extended period of time, which we don't know what the injury is, we'll learn more on Monday. Then I think they feel fine. Aiden White sounds like he'll be back for Clemson. It was one of those things they were like, I think they can get by without him, and they did, and I think that's fine. And they were able to learn about who else they had. So it worked out well. I wouldn't think Aiden White will miss next weekend's game. The way that they were talking, Dave Doran made it sound like it was something really minor. We talked about after the game, walking back to the car. It seems like he has one of these games every year where it's just a minor hiccup in practice, and they just err on the side of caution and let their elite corner play the big games and not have to play a game that they can get by without him.
Yeah, I think it happened last year, and I think it was the VMI game where he didn't play, and I mean, that makes total sense, right? Especially when now we see what they have in the cornerback room, and you can see that they are plenty deep enough to hold him out if it's something minor. But yeah, he's day to day, and hopefully he's back soon, and hopefully Brandon Cisse is too. That was a scary situation where he was down for a couple of minutes, but he got up and walked off the field, so that's great. And I'm hoping we see him back on the field soon. It was obviously off to a really, really solid start this season. But and I did want to we obviously mentioned DK Kaufman's pick six, a great play. That guy just has a knack for turnovers. I think he forced 8 over the past like couple seasons at Auburn, and then or 3 seasons, I believe, and then comes in and gets this pick six. And then wasn't he also the player who recovered the called fumble? Who recovered
No,
the
that was Caden. Caden Fordham had the fumble recovery.
okay.
He had a world class day. I'm sure we'll talk about Caden, but 11 tackles, second time above double digits in his career. Played really, really well. But DK Coffin played well too. And the main similarity between last week's pick six against Tennessee with Aiden White, this weekend's pick six with DK Coffin, is Davin Van causing havoc in the backfield.
Oh my
We talk
god.
about this 3-3-5 defense not being an opportunity for defensive ends to really cause havoc, right? You want them to, but there's 3 defensive linemen, there's 5 offensive linemen. You're going to get double teamed, and he's a guy that's going to get double teamed. Well, he found his way in the backfield and caused pressure again, got to Jack Turner, and forced an errant throw. And DK Coffin recovered, came up. I think Davin Van the last 2 weeks has played really, really good football. And there's a reason why he is one of their best players on the defensive side of the ball. And he's proving it that it doesn't have to be a sack to impact the game. He did get a sack in the game. We were talking before. We couldn't remember really what it was offhand, but that I think was his biggest play of the game, forcing the pick six, turning the tide of the game. And DK Kaufman did the rest, the 33 yards to the house.
He's directly created 14 points in the past couple weeks. How many defensive linemen can say that in the country?
He's created the same amount of points in the last 2 weeks that NC State's offense, or touchdowns, that the same amount of touchdowns NC State's offense has produced in the last 2 weeks.
No, he's a player that's never going to get the proper amount of recognition that he deserves, just because he is playing on that 3-man front, and the stats usually aren't going to be eye-popping. But he's absolutely one of the best defensive linemen in the ACC. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on to have a great NFL career, because he is a truly disruptive, explosive, name your complimentary adjective. He's just awesome. He is a really, really good player, and he played like that against Louisiana Tech. Also, just leading the team. I mean, he's a captain. He's in the number 1 jersey, and he just helped the defense, not get rattled. Like the captain stepped up in this game as well. I think Caden Fordham mentioned it. And I think Thorne might have mentioned it as well, that Sean Brown in the halftime locker room apparently was really lighting into people as a captain. Getting the defense together after that really rough second quarter, and he came out and had a good game. And we mentioned DK. I did also, one of the more unheralded plays, Jahad Carter had a hit on the sideline on a deep throw that broke up a pass that would have maybe been a touchdown, or at least given Louisiana Tech the ball like inside the 5. So, he had a couple of good plays. Bishop had they were using Bishop, like they were blitzing him a little bit more than I feel like usual. And he had a quarterback hurry at one point, and I thought he had a good game, and they had an almost targeting penalty that they overturned, which I thought it was just a big hit. It was actually a really good grab by the Louisiana Tech receiver. But I thought just the secondary, that's a group that we hyped up a lot in the preseason. So it's kind of validating to see them actually playing at a super high level right now. They're definitely living up to expectations.
For sure they are. And you talk about blitzing Bishop Fitzgerald. There was one play they brought him and DK Kaufman and had Sean Brown go from linebacker mid-play and drop all the way back to safety. It's like where he played the first couple of years of his college career. Thought it was interesting play design when you have a guy that can do both. Obviously, don't want him doing that a million times a game, but when you want to bring both safeties, you can drop one. You can drop your linebacker way back there and let him play center field. So it was a run, so it didn't matter, but it was an interesting play.
Yeah, so defensively, far from a perfect game. I mean, like Jack Turner almost had a career high in passing. He threw for he ended up 19 for 36 for 281 yards, a touchdown and a pick. So they put up yards, but I mean, NC State won the second half 24-3, man. Like they figured it out in the second half. They had three-play drives, so 2 3-and-outs, and then the interception, the pick six play, where Louisiana Tech totaled 5 yards on those drives, and they gave up a field goal and then a turnover on downs right at the end of the game, and that was the half. Part of that is, if you go and look at the drive chart, NC State really just didn't give them much of an opportunity to get anything going in the second half. I mean, NC State possessed the ball for 36 minutes of this game compared to 23 for Louisiana Tech. So they really dominated the time of possession as well, put together these long drives. And I'm going to use that as a segue, Noah. So let's talk about CJ Bailey. Obviously, want to lead off with, like you said earlier in the show, scary situation for Grayson. Hope everything's okay. We don't know the nature of the injury. We're not going to speculate on the injury until we know what's up on Monday or later. But hope he's all right. CJ Bailey, second time we've ever seen him in game action. First time he's ever thrown the ball. I mean, the hype looked real to me, Noah. It is clear why folks have been so excited about CJ for months. The 6'6" quarterback came in January. He put on like 11 pounds in the weight room in the winter. And then by the time spring practice started, man, I was getting constant, messages from folks, from sources just saying like, CJ Bailey, like he's legit. He looks like the future of this program. And he looked like the future of the program, Louisiana Tech, against Louisiana Tech. Am I overreacting to a little over one half of football? Absolutely. And you know what? I'm going to overreact today. I fully recognize this is a tiny sample size, and I'm not saying that he's going to be able to take over the reins immediately and be an elite quarterback immediately, but I certainly saw enough that makes me very confident that all of the praise that was heaped on him during the offseason looked very legit. So against Louisiana Tech, he completes 13 of 20 passes for 156 yards, did throw an interception, also rushed for a touchdown, completed 7 straight passes at one point, led NC State on 3 consecutive scoring drives. Noah, what did you think of our first time getting to see CJ slinging around a bit?
Yeah, I was impressed. I was really impressed by him, especially with how he started. 1 for 3 passing with a pick. It's not really confidence boosting when your first 3 pass attempts go that way
Yeah.
of your college career. But he rebounded, completed his next 7 passes, moved the team down the field, 3 first downs on those 7 passes. Looked really, really good that way. Had this sequence when he found Noah Rogers on the sideline, tight window throw, amazing catch by Noah Rogers on the sideline. Then find Justin Jolie for the big gain downfield. Those 2 plays in a row were kind of like, wow, like he's got something. Obviously, playing Louisiana Tech, this is not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to discredit them. They're, as DK Kaufman said, on scholarship too, but like it's not a elite secondary. It's really not. And so he looked good against it. I think that anytime you're playing your first game, he was playing in action. He wasn't expected to play. I even tweeted about it. I was like, this is a guy who was not expecting to play against Louisiana Tech. Maybe he was in like the second half in garbage time. Maybe he'd do some handoffs, whatever. But he came in, looked really good, settled down, and played well. So I think the hype is real around CJ Bailey. It begs the question what they do moving forward. If that's your quarterbacks on tape now, which I think is always good if you're NC State, he can learn. He called game 1 a learning lesson. He's going to learn a lot this week about what he did right, what he did wrong. I think he did read the progressions really, really well. There were some plays he was getting to his 3rd progression and hitting the guy. So I think that is really just shows his kind of maturity. This is a guy who, yes, he's 6'6". He's a freshman. He's going to make freshman mistakes. The interception was a freshman mistake right over the middle. Linebacker popped up and got it. So what? NC State will live with it. But he's so mature. He's so just – it's weird. Like, he's played with elite talent his whole life. So I don't think that's the problem. Like, I think that just helped him, right? Like, he's played with Jeremiah Smith, who is obviously Ohio State's best receiver right now. And I think that says a lot about who he is. Playing in Miami, playing in a very football-rich town, a town where these guys are playing against elite talent every day, whether it's in the backyard with the older guys or on the football field in the high school level. So the moment wasn't too big, and he proved it. And I'm really excited to see what CJ Bailey has moving forward, whether that's this weekend at Clemson, whether that's next year. Because, I do think this not only validated why they brought CJ Bailey in, but it validated why they didn't bring in a transfer quarterback to be the backup. he proved that he's more than capable backup this year, and we'll see what they do moving forward. But we'll see. But I think overall, he impressed, and I think that is exactly what NC State wanted to see if they were forced to play him, which they were.
Yeah, and like I'm not even going to speculate on like what will happen with the quarterback situation in terms of, like first things first, like Grayson needs to be healthy. So that's the first priority here. But regardless of what happens under center for NC State the rest of the year, I mean, you have to feel pretty encouraged if you're an NC State fan by what you saw from CJ. And like you said, it validated what we had heard all off season. It validated what he has shown in the spring game as well. He is a very talented quarterback who looks like he will have the talent, the ability. Yeah, you mentioned like his maturity, his football IQ. Like you say, he was going through progressions. He looked poised, composed after his interception. He just really settled in. He was, as he said, just playing ball. Like he was making plays out of structure. He was scrambling. He was delivering some tough throws with touch, but also zipping some in with impressive velocity. Like it was better than you could reasonably expect a freshman true debut to really look. So really impressed by CJ. I mean, now if Grayson is out for next week, and then you're looking at first career start in Death Valley against Clemson in a game that is hugely consequential to NC State's season. That is a tough game. That is a tough first start to make, Noah. But I think you would have to feel, as an NC State fan, you'd have to feel as good as you could, considering you'd be starting a true freshman in Death Valley based on what he showed. But we'll see, man. I was overall very encouraged by the freshman's performance, and we'll see how he continues to develop, and we'll see how NC State's quarterback situation continues to develop as well. All right. Well, should we hand out some game balls, Noah?
Yeah, let's hand out some game balls.
All right. So every week we like to just recognize a couple players of the game. We're each going to give out two. Noah, who's your first player of the game? Who do you want to give a shout out to before we head out today?
Yeah, I'll go with Kendrick Raphael. This is a game. He had the second most rushing yards of his career, 63 yards. He averaged 7 yards a carry. He had a cool little hurdle in the first half. He was doing it all. He scored a touchdown. He's a guy that I think sometimes gets lost in the running back conversation when you look at Jordan Waters and Hollywood Smothers. But he's a guy that can play. He was their number one running back for most of the year ago. And I think that learned a lot, as a true freshman came in this year. Seems like he's got a little swagger about him, and he's learned. And he ran really well. So nine attempts, 63 yards, and a touchdown. NC State will take that every single day of the week from him.
Absolutely. My first one I'm going to give to NC State's collective pass blocking. The offensive line is a unit that we have criticized, I feel like, a fair amount this year so far, but they allowed 0 sacks on Saturday. Part of that I thought was good quarterback play. I thought both McCall and Bailey did a good job avoiding pressure and getting the ball out. But also, I thought the tight ends did a better job when they were in pass protection. I thought the running backs really did a good job in pass protection. I thought overall the team just did a much better job. Like Robert and I mentioned it in the sense of rushing attack, but like it's not in the pocket. It's not just the quarterback. It's not just the offensive lineman. It's everyone. It has to be 11-man football, which is what the coaches have talked a lot about recently. And this looked a lot closer to 11-man football as they protected the quarterback in this game. Again, allowed 0 sacks, 6 tackles for loss in total. So still not outstanding numbers, but I mean, I thought it was a positive step in the right direction for NC State's pass defense for the most part. There were still some areas where they struggled, but I thought it was one of their better, definitely a step forward from Tennessee. I'll say that.
For sure. I agree. Second game ball for me. We're going to go defensive side of the field. I'm going to go with Caden Ford. As I said earlier, 11 total tackles, 3 solo, a lot of assisted, but that's what happens when they're rallying to the ball. 1 tackle for a loss, 1 pass breakup. This is a guy who's kind of, billed as being the leader of this defense. Mike linebacker, where's the in-helmet communication? Puts up a double digits total tackle day, second time of his career, one shy of his career high of 12 that he put up at UVA a year ago. He played outstanding. Was really, really impressed with what Caden Fordham has done. He's grown a lot since last year, and he showed up when they needed him to.
Yeah, I thought it was probably his best game of his career. I thought he was really, really good. My last one, I'm going to give it to CJ. I mean that was just a really tough situation to come into, down at that point by 1 possession. By halftime, it was 2. Coming back from down 11 to win by 10, staying composed, staying poised in the pocket. Again, making plays out of structure, scrambling when he needed to, delivering a few really, really impressive passes, and just doing what NC State needed him to do to win the game. I thought it was all very, very impressive. I thought he was very decisive for a true freshman. They weren't always the perfect decisions. There were like the interception, and then there was one other throw where you're like, "Ooh, that could have been a turnover." But other than that, he was making quick decisions, and had a really, really productive day, and enough to really generate some excitement within this fan base for what's to come this season and beyond for the Wolfpack quarterback position. And so he certainly deserves a game ball, and bright future ahead for that guy. It certainly appears. All right, Noah. Before we get out of here, I do want to touch on the upcoming matchup with Clemson. So next week, the Wolfpack travels to Death Valley. It'll be a 12 noon kickoff. Clemson was on a bye week this past weekend, so it's the second consecutive week where NC State will have to play an opponent coming off a bye. But the Tigers this season, they're 1-1. They lost 34-3 to Georgia, and then blew out App State 66-20. We're going to get really in depth into that matchup later this week, and we'll have tons of preview content up on the Wolfpacker.com. But before we really dive into the details, before we wrap up this show, what is one thing that you saw? And I didn't prep you for this, so I apologize to just dump you on it at the end of the show. But one thing you saw that gave you hope for the Clemson game, and then also, what is one thing that you saw that makes you a little cautious? Maybe an error, a mistake that could be amplified when you're playing a Clemson instead of Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, I think the hope is, they're passing the ball a little bit more downfield. They're doing it to multiple receivers. Noah Rogers had 6 targets on Saturday afternoon. That's more than he had in the first 2 games combined. And Wesley Grimes had 3 targets. I think it was 1 under what he had in the first 2 games combined. So they're spreading the ball around a little bit more. It's not all Kevin Concepcion, who still led the team with 9 targets, 8 receptions, a lot of screens that couldn't get going. So I think that gave me hope. The thing that gave me a little bit of concern is NC State only had 2 tackles for a loss against Louisiana Tech. If you're going to beat Clemson on the road, you're going to have to get in the backfield. You're going to have to make them get behind the chains, not rely on self-inflicted penalties that make them end up behind the sticks. Your defense needs to make a 1st and 10 turn into 2nd and 18 really quick. And right now they really didn't do that against Louisiana Tech. So that's kind of something to keep an eye on moving forward is, can they get in the backfield with this defense and make plays? Obviously, we know they can make plays in the secondary, but we need to see them kind of push through the line and get in the backfield, either to sack or hit the running back there. You got to make a play back there.
Yeah, my reason for concern is on the other side of the ball, and it's still the running game. I thought it looked fine against Louisiana Tech, but not a huge step forward. They still had 10 runs, 28% of their attempts stuffed at the line or behind the line. So that's not what you want. And more so than just the rushing attack, I'm more concerned with the ability to stay ahead of the sticks. Because this offense, like any offense, is a lot better when you're dealing with 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, instead of what they were dealing with against Louisiana Tech, where their average 3rd down distance to go was 8.1 yards.
Yeah.
That is really not good.
And it was 9 yards against Tennessee, I think. So no
Yeah.
one improved
So
it there.
that's an area that against teams with talented defensive fronts, like we saw against Tennessee, like you're gonna face against Clemson. That is, believe it or not, Clemson has a good defensive line. I know, shocking, but you're gonna have to deal with that against Clemson again. Is this team ready to block against another a defensive front that is really really talented, just like Tennessee's? That's going to be a really big test, and that's the reason I'm concerned about that matchup still. Reason for optimism is the secondary. Just great to see that the secondary depth is there. You got to feel good about that. Once everyone's healthy, they're going to be able to play a lot of defensive backs and a lot of different roles. And against the better passing offenses they face this season, they're going to have the talent to slow them down. So great to see that depth really showed up. It was good for the future of the program at all. You have Cissé a true sophomore, and Devon Marshall is a junior, redshirt junior. So he'll be in good shape as well. He has multiple years of eligibility left. So that's all exciting. Great to see the Pack secondary step up. And I know that it was a stressful game, Wolfpack fans, but there were positives to take away from it. And like we said before the game, we're really going to learn about this team next week. And we're looking forward to previewing it and then covering the game with you all. We appreciate you tuning in and watching today's episode of the Wolfpacker Show. We will see you on Thursday for our preview episode of the Wolfpack versus the Tigers. Have a good one, folks. Thanks again.